So, well, let's get on talking about what we were gonna talk about. So Shirley, what happened? Tell us. Tell us the whole situation. When was it?
Oh my God. That was a long time ago. It was like in the late 60s. Probably 10 years after, or 10 years before Little Rock 9. I was attending an all-black school, which was right down the street from my home. I used to walk to school, walk home for lunch, and walk back to school, and that happened for 4 years. The 4th grade is when they closed down the little black school, and we were sent to the white school, which was not quite a mile away. It was like 9/10 of a mile away from my front door. So we had to walk. We weren't allowed to ride the bus because it wasn't a mile away from school. And the first thing that I noticed, the first day was fine, very uneventful. Nothing happened, no words were said, no snide remarks, you know, a lot of stares, but no remarks of any kind. But then the next day, it's like all hell broke loose. It's like all of a sudden, you know, we were not wanted. And, you know, there were name callings, and there were fights, and for the first, you know, couple of weeks of school, I noticed that when the first day of class, we get to walk on the sidewalk when we got to school. But then on the second day, everybody, all the white students were either standing on the sidewalk, or their books, or, you know, their personal items were on the sidewalk, and so we kind of had to go around them, walk in the grass or whatever to get to class.
Sidewalks were blocked, so you couldn't get to class? Wow.
Yeah, they were just like, we had to go and walk in the grass.
And so who was being blamed for the fights?
We were, of course.
Yeah. You were blamed for the fights, even though you were being blocked.
Yes. So it was an interesting time, and I just remember, you know, one day, the first day, fine. The second day, you know, suddenly, you know, the N-word is being thrown around, and, you know, people are making snide remarks about, oh, something's burning, I smell something. You know, it was just vulgar. It was really hard that first semester.
And you're 4th grade?
That was in the 4th grade.
Wow. How did you feel?
Confused. Really didn't know what's going on? What's wrong? You know, I had a pretty sheltered life, so I really didn't know anything. But then it wasn't until years later, I finally figured it out when I stopped and think about it and go back and notice what happened. And that's when I realized it was all about race, and discard was because we were not wanted and misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. So you say you were sheltered. So your parents, you weren't aware that there was this much conflict between the races because you were in the black community. And
right.
How did you feel in the black school and in the black community? How were you treated?
Just, you know, little skinny, smart girl, you know. They used to pick on me because I had, you know, wore glasses then, so 4 eyes and stuff like that. But other than that, it was fine.
So then at the young age of, how old are we in 4th grade? Like 8 years old? 8 years old or something like that? Then you became aware of this whole problem in the world of misperception of skin.
Right, and race, yeah, all of a sudden.
Oh, I've often wondered how that affected the emotional development and sense of value of children, not only during the time of integration, but before then and since then, even now when we have so many negative messages in media. And I mean, even now, like in the workplace, and where we still see all of that as, I still see it as being believed. Like, you have to prove your case. I feel like you have to prove your case that you're not that.
Yeah, that I'm worthy to even be here, that I'm worthy to even breathe the same air as most people. Yes. Wow. It was hard. You know, it messes with your mind, it messes with your self-worth. And then at a very early age, you either figure it out and you just deal with it and become kind of hardened about it, or it breaks you and it turns you into something that, you know, you weren't meant to be. it was a choice. It was a hard choice, but it was a choice.
Wow. How do you think that this, I think it's maybe a constant choice.
Every day, yeah, even now, yes. Not as much so, but yes.
How do you think that it's affected you in terms of maybe either education or career? Can you give me any examples where you feel like that you have not had the same opportunities because of maybe your because of your ethnicity or because of the skin color?
Right. I've had lots of interviews over my life, my adult life. You know how you have phone interviews?
Now you have a bachelor's degree, right?
Yes, I do have a bachelor's. I have phone interviews and everything's gone fine. You know, they're asking you questions. Well, Shirley, when can you come by and meet with us? And, you know, okay, set up a time and come. And then you get there, and a lot of times it's like it changed.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
the tone changed. Then all of a sudden, well, you know, it's all of a sudden it's not available. Or, you know, they've already made a choice. So why did you make this appointment with me if you've already made a choice? But yeah, sometimes it was very obvious. Another time, but most of the time, you know, it wasn't. You know, they had ways of hiding it. But you knew once because you can see the tone and the look on the person's face and the mannerisms.
Right. That suddenly when you show up, they realize that you're a person of color, and we're not having that here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, legally that's illegal, but people have ways of getting around the law. For instance, they can say things like, "Oh, we just found someone that was a better fit," and they don't describe what fit means. And fit just means we found somebody that would get along in the office better, which just means, what does it mean? They don't talk black, or, you know, I don't know. What does it mean? Sorry to be so direct, but I mean, frankly, that's what it means when there's not a person of color in the room. I mean, I'm in rooms where there's not a person of color, and these are the things that I've heard said. And so I'm putting it on the table. This is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And so, what do you feel like would be the difference in your life if what would be different
if it didn't happen, if segregation didn't happen?
Oh, not if segregation didn't happen. Let's say, what do you think your life would be like if you were white?
Sorry.
I know, is that a silly question? I mean, I don't know what my life would be like.
I have no idea.
Okay, so
I think there would have been a lot more open doors.
Open doors.
A lot less shut doors, slammed doors.
Because I've tried to imagine the same thing. When I moved to the United States, I moved to North Carolina, and I came from Germany, and I was highly unaware of race, and I was about the 4th grade, about the same age when I moved to the United States. And then there was a lot of the racial stuff going on. It's around 73 or 74. And so there was a lot of racial stuff in the news that I had been unaware of. And so, but the neighborhoods, the apartment buildings, and the military bases overseas are highly integrated because, frankly, a lot of the people who enlist in the military are socioeconomically they're poor, and that they don't have the option of a college education. So a lot of poor people go into the military. So it's a lot of people of color, and it's a lot of poor white people go into the military, and it's a very integrated environment. The officers are not very
colorful.
There we have it. There, that's the word I'm looking for. But so most of my school friends were not white, and most of my neighbors were not white, and I just saw that as normal. I just hadn't noticed until we moved to the United States. And so since, I have wondered what my life would have been like had I not been a little white girl moving to North Carolina, because I noticed even in our churches that it was not very heterogeneous. It was there were no people of color in our church. There was one Latino man that was in the military, and we had a missionary mindset from people that weren't American, but not for people who were American. So that was okay as long as they weren't from America. I don't know what that conflict is about, that hypocrisy, but and so I was treated differently as a girl with an accent. I didn't speak English well. I mean, I spoke English well, but it was with a very thick accent. It just so happened it was a German accent. And so, but I was treated very differently from kids. My hair got cut on the school bus, and my hair was really short. It was a pixie, so I often was asked if I was a boy or a girl. I looked exactly like another sister of mine, so nobody could tell the difference between us, and so they would often call me her name, and that sister would get very angry at them and at me, and so I wasn't treated well. But I often wonder if I had also had the invisibility of being black, would I have been treated even worse? And I have only been able to conclude the answer is a resounding yes.
Yeah.
But because I had the privilege or the benefit of blue eyes and light skin, I got some empathy from some people that I might not have gotten had I had dark skin, that from teachers. I got some empathy from teachers, and I got some empathy in my church. I wouldn't have been able to go to that church had I had dark skin, and so I wouldn't have had the same kind of education had I had dark skin. I wouldn't have had attention from teachers. Sometimes even
not positive attention.
Correct. There might have been some negative assumptions made about me from the very beginning. Some attention, negative attention. Did you ever get negative attention from teachers? Tell me about that.
Yes, I did. They just kind of look at you funny and just keep quiet or whatever. But then after that first couple of tests, I did well in school. I did really well in school. So then after the second or third test, then it changed. They realized that, okay, she's not dumb. And then they treated me a little bit differently. And then they also started expecting a little bit more from me, more than I was willing to give. But so it kind of changed. It was kind of strange. Then they started talking to my mom about, Shirley could make straight A's if she wanted to. And I don't want to. Because then that means I felt like they were trying to make me blend in more with them, and I was already feel like I was being pulled away from my friends because I would always want to be the only black in my classroom. Whereas my other friends, there would be at least 3 or 4 of them in a classroom, but I was always the only black in my classroom. I don't know how it worked out. I don't know if they did alphabetically. I don't know grade point. I don't know what they did, but it always seemed like I was the only one in my classroom, and so I felt isolated a lot of times.
There's actually some communication research about that. It's called distinctiveness theory, and I noticed that also at the University of Arkansas when I'm teaching there. Anytime that I think the research says less than 8% of a person's group in the environment or in the organization, in the classroom, or for instance at the university, less than 8% of that demographic, then the person becomes highly aware of how distinct they are, and how different they are from everybody else in the group. So and their need to retain their selfness or their own identity. And so for instance, if I'm working in an environment that's highly male and I am one of only a few females, it's going to be very challenging for me have to give up things that I see as essential to my identity to blend into the male environment. For instance, males tend to have a more direct and aggressive communication behavior by the research than females do. We have more collaborative. What do you think? Instead of order giving I'm just telling you what the research says. And so I will feel kind of compromised if I code switch and adapt to the male way. And so what Shirley is saying is consistent with what the research says about people who are isolated from other students of their ethnic group in a situation. And so because you were alone often because you were smarter, so I'm assuming that maybe your school put students that were more gifted in one class, and so they may have sorted, I don't know, maybe they sorted students that had higher academic abilities into different classes, and you went with the students that were smarter, and but at least they were not doing it racially. You went with the smarter students and the other kids did. Okay. But there's another thing that Shirley's alluding to here is that often what happens is that when students come, and this is in the academic research, when students come to college, students of color come to college, and they become educated about some things, and they start changing. That's what happens when you go to college. You start changing. You learn stuff you didn't know. If students are first generation students, when they go back home, it's often threatening for their families and their communities. And so then their families and their communities may, may feel threatened and say, oh, you feel like you're smart now. And that's not just communities of color, that's all first generation families. And oh, you're using big words now. Oh, you think you're better than us now. And that's consistent in a lot of first generation situations, and especially when the student is from a low socioeconomic situation or a blue collar situation, because higher ed tends to use a different kind of vocabulary code, like more than one syllable, where blue collar and lower socioeconomic uses one syllable. And so when what Shirley is talking about here, when a person excels academically like Shirley did, it can often be perceived that they think they're better than everybody else because they're using the big words they're learning that excite them. And so Shirley was trying not to look like she was thinking she was better than everybody else by doing well in school and trying to still belong with her family and her friends and not become excluded. I missed that comment. Go ahead and put that back up there. Thank you for your hearts. I love that. And we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And will you, hey, this is DocCourage, and I'm here with Shirley Martin, and we're talking about race and the year that Shirley's school was integrated and how Shirley experienced that and the conflict, and she was just 4th grade. That was not the same year, but about the same time I came to the United States, and how we experienced our enculturation in these crazy societies differently. So thank you for the hearts. I'll go back and see your comment later in the replay. If you don't put it back up, please. Oh, I just said I have to go, but thank you. Thanks, Eddie. Come back soon. Watch the replay. This is Shirley Martin, my friend. He's in Iowa.
Oh,
yeah.
Hi, Iowa.
A Spanish pastor, and bilingual.
Okay.
So say.
You know what I was just thinking about when the education changed. When I was going to the black school, and basically, I don't know if this was everywhere, but 2nd grade and 3rd grade was together, and 4th grade and 5th grade, so there was like 2 grades in each classroom, except for the 1st grade and the 12th grade. But when I left from the 4th grade, before I went to the 4th grade at the white school, I noticed that the textbooks were newer.
Oh, yeah, that's what, you were telling me that.
And my books at the old school they had, you know how you write your name and the year that you were there, that's your book. But my books, the front panel on the front inside was all covered. There were columns of names that went from top to bottom, and there might have been 2 columns. And I noticed that, and I had books that my cousins had, and they were like 6 or 7 years older than me.
Wow.
So I had their books when I was there. But then when I went to the white school, I got a new book.
Wow.
I was the first name in some of those books, and that was kind of freaky. I'm like, wow.
These white kids get good books.
Exactly. So then that's when later on I kind of realized, maybe I was not getting the best education at that time. And there was all this thing, equal education. It was not equal.
Separate but equal.
Yeah, it was not equal.
That's true.
And that was a realization that kind of took me back for a second.
You know what? I'm wondering if that's still true, especially since the way we pay for education before college is by tax base and by region. And now I'm really not an expert. I have a degree in higher education. My doctorate's in higher education, but I'm not an expert on taxation and public policy. I really don't love politics. It makes me nervous. I hate it. It makes but I was just meeting with Dr. Charles Robinson, the Vice Provost of Diversity and Community at University of Arkansas. I think it was yesterday I was meeting. And he's also the Vice Provost of Student Affairs. And he told me that recently in Arkansas, we have a thing called the Lottery Scholarship. And the lottery is, most of the people who buy lottery tickets, if you look by demographics, are poor people. Right? So it's kind of a taxation on poor people or who are hoping, to get. But the lottery pays for scholarships. And to get that lottery scholarship, you used to have a 2.5 GPA or score 19 on the ACT. Minimum. Well, they've just revised the policy, and now you have to score 19 on the ACT, no 2.5. And what people often don't realize is that adversely and affects students of color and students from regions where the schools don't have as many resources and don't have as high a taxation base. Do you have any insight on why, and can you explain why that adversely affects students of color more?
Yes, that is very true, because when I first moved to Arkansas in 1989...
Just a second. The rumble you hear in the background, that's motorcycles, because we have a thing called Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue here this weekend, and it's motorcycles everywhere. So we're staying off the roads. Go ahead.
Yes, I was in the financial aid office for forever, 11 years, and then I moved over to the scholarship office at the university, and so I was awarding the scholarships, so I did notice the difference in the schools and the GPAs and the ACT scores, the minority students versus the white students, and there was a huge gap. And after just noticing where I learned this, this person is from Ida, or another person was from Little Rock, or right here in Fayetteville and Springdale, and a lot of times their averages was a whole lot higher, and the ACT scores and SAT scores were a whole lot higher than our minority students. And so there was already a little guideline that was kind of lower, so that they could reach that.
Well, Shirley, listen, I'm going to tell you something that hurts my heart, and I know it's going to hurt your heart. I have heard a lot of people say, well, that's just because those people aren't as smart.
No. I think
what is it because?
It's just because what was available to one group of students is not available to all students.
Right.
In a certain socioeconomic area, whatever, cultural area. It's just there is a big difference between the education level. There's a big gap because there's a big gap in resources. For instance, in our area where Walmart Corporate is, in Bentonville, Arkansas, there is a huge tax base because you have a nice corporate funding, not only of Walmart and Sam's, but also
Walmart has mandated that all the vendors who supply product to Walmart and Sam's bring in, have an office there, and those offices, they pay their vendors. It's a good profit area, and people make great salaries. And so here in Northwest Arkansas, people make good money per capita, and so income is high. And so the Bentonville School District has good money, they have good equipment, and so kids there, so we have great teachers there, lots of equipment, lots of opportunities, unusual things. We have charter schools here in Northwest Arkansas. We have the #1 school in all Arkansas is here in Fayetteville, and it's a charter school. It's called Haas Hall Academy, which my kids got the privilege and benefit to go to because we live here in Northwest Arkansas, and because we could afford to get a car, they could drive back and forth to school. I'm talking about privilege because we are here in this area. We could afford to live here in this area. My husband works at a Fortune 100 company. I used to work there, and we could afford to live there. This is not all because we are white, but the fact that we are white affords us the privilege of some things that if I was black, I probably would have never met my husband, frankly, or maybe I wouldn't have been cute to him. I don't know. I might have been anyway, but who knows? But I also, because of multiple factors, I had the privilege of going back to school and getting my doctorate. And whiteness, you can't pretend that whiteness doesn't have something to do with that.
It's real.
It's real.
Very real.
But that's different from the Delta area of Arkansas, where students there's not a huge corporate base. There's a lot of manufacturing, and so the salaries and farmers, and so the salaries and pay base of parents, which is what supports the school system, is a lot lower. So what the kids have in school and the opportunities that the kids have to learn is different.
Definitely.
And so that's what the difference is. It's not a difference in capacity. It's a difference in opportunity, which is what the difference in performance is. And so this is kind of a hot button for me because I still hear people saying, well, why don't they go to college if they want opportunities? Right. Well, the reason is because to get the scholarships, we've set the bar so high academically, but we haven't provided an opportunity in the education system before college for students who don't live in an area where the schools are great to do that. Right. And often to be able to, we sent our kids to ACT classes that cost $75 a pop. And if their score wasn't over 21, then we sent them again, and we sent them again. And, when I was a single mom, I could afford to send my son to that once, but I had a job in corporate. I couldn't afford to send him twice or 3 times.
Right. That's very real.
It's real.
Especially with the composite scores, and so we started teaching a lot of the students, start taking it as early as you can and take it as many times as you can. But as you said, in certain areas, that is just not an option for some.
Right. So I guess we're just here to say that thank you, Anointed to Love. Thank you, and I hope you guys all share and watch the replay and share the replay. Thank you, and thanks for all the hearts too. And so I guess what we're here to say is that race does make a difference. It has made a difference. People we work right next to and sit next to in church and sing next to, their lives have been different because of race and are different, and they've had different opportunities or lack of opportunities, and we need to be aware of that. And I have the, I don't know if it's a privilege, but I'm often in the room with people when it's an all-white room, and I hear some of the myths about why people of color do or do not achieve some of the same things that seem to be more average for whites. And so this is why I'm talking about it, because there are some things that are said that I'm like, this is just foolishness. So let's I'm going to out the secrets. So that's what we're here
Yeah,
talking about,
exactly.
Shirley's experience today. And
Right. But praise God, it can all be overcome.
it can.
Yes.
Right. But let's not pretend it hadn't happened.
No. And it wasn't easy, but it can be done.
It can be done.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for joining us today.
Goodbye.
We love you. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye. Let's see. I always forget how to do this, how to end. Okay, here we go.